Appreciate the time, everyone. I know that there's nothing else you'd rather be doing at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, so thanks for coming out. My name is Kris. I'm the Senior Director of Conversion Strategy at BounceX. And I want to spend most of our half hour here together today to talk about some insights that we've seen as far as ways to fuel new customer acquisition online. And before I get into that, I know that our company may be a somewhat new name for a majority of the people in the audience, is because we just started breaking into the UK market. We were founded 5 years ago in New York City. We just opened our London office in Regent Street, and we really have spent about the past week here at ICE before and now at LAC, really trying to get our name out there in what we've seen an emerging market here in the gaming market. We do work with a few gaming companies already. Betfair was one of our early clients. We've been with them for a really long time. FanDuel in the US, a few casinos there like Mohegan. But yeah, in that time we've grown to just over 250 employees, spread between the London office and New York, but with the majority in the New York office. One key thing, though, that I think really separates us from a lot of other software companies that you'll see is that 75% of that workforce is product and performance focused. And our product, what we consider is really the platform, but also the performance and the value that comes out of it. So we're full service end to end. We provide everything as far as strategy, creative design, integration work, everything for our client, because we've typically seen that. I came from the other side of the table before I joined BounceX. I was at Reebok. Our founders were in retail at fashion retailers like Bonobos. And any time that we would encounter any kind of software vendor, we typically see that there'd be a nice flashy sales pitch. There's a lot of things that it could do. Eventually, once you got the keys, you saw that most of that was bullshit, and the performance really relied on either an expert to run the platform that you either had to train or hire, which took a significant investment on your end. So we wanted to do different, invest heavily in the product, take very modest investor fundraising, which usually ends up having those I think skewed incentives internally and making you focus on growth rather than product, and really provide value for our clients. So what our platform really does is basically identify visitor behavior on site with the goal of identifying that visitor, determining who they are down to a person, but also understand where they fall in your conversion funnel, what their level of intent is, how likely they are to convert in that session. And that's about the most I want to talk about the company itself right now, because that's not what this conversation is supposed to be about, but more some insights that we've seen while we in the 5 years that we've been on clients across every industry, every vertical, seeing that typically for you to really maximize incremental revenue, what you rely on is new customer acquisition. The problem is the paid media spend that you have really become table stakes. Things like AdWords, things like Facebook custom audiences, and people-based marketing there. Those are really truly scalable channels where if you invest money in, you get money out. But eventually there becomes a cap that you hit where you start seeing fatigue, you start seeing diminishing returns. So what we always want to see is where can we unlock a new scalable channel that can really provide profound revenue lift. What we found is that it's with your existing customers. So we'll talk through that a little bit, go through kind of the challenges that we've seen, all kinds of companies online have been facing, as well as go through what we have really identified as a solution for that, and give you a 4-step process on really how to design and execute a strategy to take advantage of it. So as we were talking about, customer acquisition relies on new scalable channels, and that really drives new customer growth. The issue is these channels, the costs are constantly increasing. And as the costs go up, you have very lofty CBA targets that you need to hit. And this is over a 10-year scale here. I know that the font's a little bit small, but in the last 10 years, costs for AdWords have increased dramatically. Same with Facebook. Facebook more because of maybe the nascency of the platform, but the cost will continue to go up. And there's a few reasons for this. I mean, competition is going to drive this impact all the time, and especially for gaming like yourselves, you guys are in a very competitive market. But there are also going to be things and changes that companies like Google and Facebook make that are going to drive these costs up over time. And you'll see, I think, a really good example. In just the last year, Google made 3 significant changes that drive the cost per click up. And we'll look at them. This was what their SERP page was in 2016, just a year ago, the same time last year. This is what the SERP page looks like now, and you'll notice 3 main differences. One is the right rail is entirely gone. They removed that about last year, took the entire right rail ads, that was about 5 ads, and completely wiped them. And what that does is takes away a significant percentage of the supply that they had on the page. In addition, they did add one additional ad, but it's one of these larger ads along the top. And what that did is, even though it provided additional ad real estate, it drove the organic listings down. Well, you'll see, especially on mobile, now you can't rely on Google Organic as much anymore. You have to begin investing more in ad space if you want to get in front of your customers. Another really subtle one is the ad indicator that was yellow once before is now green. It's a subtle change, but it makes the ad stick out less. So for an average consumer who maybe typically wanted to go through to organic listings, it's a lot easier to gloss over that. So companies like Google, companies like Facebook, they're going to constantly be making these updates, making these changes to drive costs up for you. That ends up being the result. The thing that really, I think, emphasizes on the problem is that while the costs have gone up, performance has effectively stayed the same. So you're paying more for the same performance in that time. So what's the result of that? You ultimately have diminishing returns and fatiguing channels. And if the name of the game is ultimately saying, okay, how can I maximize my return on ad spend? How can I drive those acquisition costs down? The real key to that is to find a new scalable channel that you can really invest in that drives incremental revenue impact. Now what we were saying is, you guys are already driving all this traffic to your site. You don't need to invest in driving new or more top of funnel visitors. There is this new scalable channel already hiding within your existing traffic. The problem with really maximizing that and taking advantage of it is this is really the view that you typically have of your visitors. A typical analytics platform has these really, I think, superficial metrics, things such as your bounce rate, your conversion rate, new customers returning, or new visitors and returning visitors, and doesn't really give you much insight into what these visitors are actually doing. In reality, your customers are segmented out into these different intents on your different levels of intent within your acquisition funnel. And if you consider all your acquisition spend bringing in new top of funnel visitors, a lot of them will work through very quickly, and they'll be very high intent, they're very eager to buy, and they'll run straight to the bottom of the funnel. And that's really where a lot of your optimization efforts currently start taking over. Things like A/B testing, things like abandonment emails, things like any personalization efforts. What those are doing is making it easier for customers who want to buy. It's not doing anything to nurture that intent, to elevate levels of purchase intent, things like registration and deposit behaviors, which is fine. You should be doing that, absolutely. Eventually, though, what happens when you have a fully optimized site, what you need to do is focus on the forgotten untapped revenue that you have here in the center, and that's the medium high intent visitors. And the thing that I think that really begins to, or allows us to accept as marketers, and now that we have the tools to do, is see that, okay, we don't need to focus optimizing on the notion that every single visitor is ready to buy in this session. And that's, I think, what we really have been focusing on, what we've been maximizing with the tools that we have. In fact, though, there are visitors that will come through, register and deposit, that need to be nurtured over multiple sessions. But if you can really unlock them, that's where the money is. Problem with that is that it's hard to identify those visitors. Most of the people that you can identify on your site now are people who are logged in, so a majority of existing customers, existing bettors, and people who have maybe gone through and registered. But anyone who's higher in the funnel than that, it's very difficult to identify them. A typical e-commerce site can only identify about 10% of their traffic. It's a little bit higher, I believe, on betting sites. We've seen on average it's about 75% of traffic is unidentified because of the registration aspect to it. But the question is, how do we get that number closer to 50, 30, 20, and 0, right? Because when you identify people, it really refers to two things. It's twofold. You want to identify the level of intent and identify them down to the person, because then you can really truly maximize the messaging that is the most relevant for them to a one-to-one basis. Not to a cookie basis, not to a pixel basis, but down to Kris the person, Steven the person. And it's because what we've really seen is, cookies have proven to be unreliable. They're a leftover relic. It provides, a same device. It's leftover from, the same device world, or a single device world. But in reality, visitors are more connected than ever. People in general are more connected than ever. The devices per person over the last, say 10, 15 years has increased significantly. People have, for me personally, I have my iPhone on my person right now. I have my laptop in my bag, my work laptop. I have a personal laptop as well. I have a work desktop. There are 4 different devices that can tie back to a single Kris the person. And the way people browse, the way people shop, the way people buy spans across all of these different devices today. So you may begin when you're in discovery mode and your research mode on your phone, and then you come back on desktop, and you're basically beginning your entire journey from the same point. So how can we resolve that? What is this new, if cookies aren't the answer, if pixels aren't the answer, what is this new universal identifier? A new universal identifier is email. A lot of marketers in e-commerce have already picked this up because email empowers you to do a lot to the person. You use the same email to sign into Facebook, sign into Twitter, sign into Instagram, to receive email communication, the correspondence. All that, it's a vital tool that can tie back to who is this person themselves. And we want to know who they are. It's not about not knowing who the visitor is. And email originally was, I think, in 2010, a lot of people began really betting on email as being this new scalable channel that it could be, because it's effectively, if you think about it in just terms of email communication, it's very cheap. If you can collect emails, it virtually costs you nothing. You can increase the population. It allows you to really take control of your audience. And we bet really big on email in 2010 as a company. We became really the best company in the world as far as being able to capture emails in a very high volume from top of funnel traffic, not using it for previous customers, but using email truly as an acquisition source. In 2010, a lot of people didn't do that because this was email. It was not sexy at all. In 2017 today, it's still not sexy, but a lot of marketers have discovered it can generate a lot of money. And it's because email has transcended really email communication like it once was. The battle for your inbox has become constantly more fierce. Everyone is beginning to reach out more and more often. You can basically capture email or receive an email anywhere. Most people now actually will receive their email on their phones. But you have things like, maybe the Gmail promo inbox that are making it, begin to become a much more competitive channel. But it's transcended that email communication. With email itself, you can now create custom audience campaigns in people-based marketing. You can use it for visitor device graphing to stitch different devices together to provide that consistent experience, that consistent message from device to device, and eventually, ultimately use it as that key identifier. So now we know we need to collect an email, and we need to use email as a way to keep that message consistent and continue that experience. What you need to do is implement and scale tactics to identify these visitors via email. And it's beyond trying to see how can we get more people to register, because it's a tall ask. Especially, say someone's beginning their journey on their mobile phone, filling out 40 to 50 fields or more around very personal information is a very difficult task on your phone. So how do we use tactics to introduce email earlier on? Something we'll look at. Thinking about the user journey for new prospects, though, is something that we're touching on. This is obviously a little dumbed down for illustrative purposes, and it's not nearly as linear. But typically, there are usually 4 stages that you go through until you get that first deposit. It's visitor in discovery mode, trying to determine really where they want to create an account and ultimately bet. People who generate play intent, so they know that they want to bet on the site, or they ultimately want to make that deposit. Then you go through to registration and ultimately that coveted deposit. Problem is, it's not that linear because 37% of visitors ultimately will make that deposit on a different device than when they first started. We've seen this across e-commerce, we've seen this across gaming. It's just a multi-device world right now. So what you end up having is these different transitions from they play intent to registration and interest to desire happening across different devices. Maybe someone comes in from AdWords on their phone on the first session, retargeting on the second session, email on the third session. And right now, as what we've been talking about is that experience starts over. And typically what you get is profound drop off on each step. A lot of visitors will make it here. They drive in through the site, maybe through AdWords, maybe through an affiliate link. But then there's drop off because it's very difficult to get them back. So if you provide, if you are able to identify that person in the email, provide messaging offsite that is relevant to what brought them to site in the first place, whether it is some pre-deposit offer, whether it was someone who read a very good review about your site on an affiliate link or affiliate site. Make sure you use that carrot to bring people back with offsite communications, offsite remarketing, whether it is through email or through ads there. When you provide continuity of messaging on the on-site experience from what eventually got people to the site, we've seen really profound gains of upwards of 20% on conversion rate for very simple tactics as far as say if someone came in through that first deposit offer, even keeping that offer a promo code or message, reminding someone and reinforcing that message throughout their experience shows really significant results. But this is looking at a segment by segment basis. How do we get to results upwards of 5% lift on total bottom line revenue? That comes in through introducing this new channel. So there's really 4 steps to it. One is think about your traffic, think about who's coming in, and think about the behaviors that ultimately define those different segments that we talked about. So what are things that visitors can do on your website that show intent? What's the type of content that they can take in? Is it reviews? Is it social proof? Is it showing your selection of games or the games that they can win? What are different behaviors? What are different things that they can click on? What are different pages that they can visit? Is it anything like time on site, returning time, times returning to the site, total amount of time spent on a specific page? All of these things can ultimately increase the percentage of registration, the first time registration, the first time deposits. You take all of these, use these to define them, segment out your traffic, and ultimately consider what is the best message for this person and what's the right step for them to take. Are they going to ultimately go through and convert in this session, or are they not? If they're not, you need to, or if they are, you need to introduce on-site messaging that can help get them through the funnel. That's a lot of that deep funnel marketing and optimization that you are doing now, but ultimately designed to nurture someone. If they aren't, if you're identified, okay, based on the behaviors they're taking, based on what we know about them, is this someone who's not likely to convert in this session? You already paid to bring this visitor to your site one way or another. How can we get them back? How can we monetize that middle funnel traffic? Have consistent retargeting messaging, whether it is through email and whether it is through people-based marketing. And the messaging is very key. The relevancy is what drives performance. The reason existing abandonment emails work very well is because it's not a batch and blast, spray and pray promotional email. It's very relevant to what the visitor did on your website. But there's ways to get even more segmented from there, and especially for visitors who are higher in the funnel, the messaging can vary so much. It's key to have very specific segmented behavioral emails there and behavioral ads. And that is ultimately step 4, identify that visitor, bring them back to the site, and ultimately ease the method for them to go through and ultimately make that first deposit. And the result of that is ultimately a new top 5 revenue channel. That is, it's typically, I mean, consider what that means for the traffic that you currently have on your site. Think about what 5% incremental revenue lift could be. That's something that implementing these tactics, I know a lot of it sounds like theory, but ultimately it's things that we've implemented and we've seen true results with. And 5% is the average. We've seen upwards of maybe 10, 11% incremental lift on revenue. So this is a new channel. It's there for the taking, and there's opportunity for people to maximize it. And it truly does work. So I am getting kind of close to time. I did want to leave an opportunity for some questions. If you did want to continue the conversation, you can email me, Kris@BounceX. I'm always happy to talk about this kind of stuff. Maybe do a site audit, go through and talk shop or not. Shoot me an email. You can make the subject line "Make Email Sexy." That way I know what you're referring to. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kris. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Kris now? Okay. I have one.
Yep.
I mean, what is the difference in what you do? I mean, between you talk about A/B testing and what you do. And how do they differ exactly? I mean, they don't sound that different in some ways. So what are the key differences?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think, again, A/B testing really optimizes your channel to make it easier for people to go through and convert. That's really where you see the meaningful gains. If you consider, I think a good e-commerce example is when people will make an add to cart button sticky. So if someone scrolls through, say, or scrolls past an add to cart button, now they're below the fold. Something that just has worked time and time again in e-commerce is have that call to action be sticky, right? But what that's doing is if someone's ready to click that button, it's easier for them to click that button. There isn't so much nurturing. There isn't something that's giving someone a compelling reason to click that button. And that's fine. Those are optimizations that you should make. What we're really focusing on is what's that higher funnel traffic? What can we do to nurture them? How can we get them back at a later session? And ultimately not about how can we convert everyone in this session, because that's just not going to happen.
All right, do we have any questions from the floor at all? Okay, I'm going to draw things to a close actually.
Yep.
Thanks very much for that.
Yeah,
Chris.
thanks so
Very
much.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.